Yeni teknolojilerle ilgilenen Belçikalı bir dijital kimlik danışmanı kendisi. Dijital kimlik yönetimi danışmanı DENYS MALENGREAU alkışlarla davet ediyoruz.
Yeah, not spoiling stuff. Can you hear me properly? Yes. Fantastic. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Dennis. I come from, the tiny country like Cyprus, Belgium. And I basically do consulting for helping people, organizations, plan and manage their digital identity. Today, my topic is all about challenging trust in the digital age. So the two keywords you might bear in mind today are trust and digital. So my presentation will be the following three key parts. The first will be addressing the context and the paradigm shifts we are witnessing today. The second part will be trust issues online and more specifically on social media. When you raise issues, you also need to bring up solutions. So this will be part 3, and then we will have open questions and some minutes to take some questions as well. Let's go. So the paradigm shift. As you know, the world is changing quite rapidly and is connected at an unprecedented scale like never before. So we've seen the so-called datafication of society. That is impacting everything in life. I mean, as the world gets connected, from the smartphones, tablets, to tomorrow the tables, the shoes, whatever, it is having a growing important influence on our lives. I mean, the way we interact with one another. I see 3 steps, actually, in these evolutions, if you look at the past 10, 15 years. The first being the accessibility, with 2 parts. The first, the prices of smartphones have been going on over time, and the coverage, the broadbands, going from 2G to 3, 4, and 5G soon. So it's getting faster and faster as years go by. Then you have, of course, from the early 2000s, we've come from some sort of passive internet to an active internet consumption. So with social media, everybody started talking to one another. It was having a great impact, this idea of connecting people with one another. And third, of course, and maybe one of the greatest change over the past 10, 15 years, I would say 2007 with the iPhone, was, of course, the rise of smartphone and internet mobility. So keep these 3 aspects in mind, with accessibility, activity, and mobility. And you may see that the numbers are growing and keep growing over time, even though that internet penetration has been slowing down over the past 3, 4 years, kind of. So we have, as a society, responsibility to connect the other 50%. Takes time and not easy, of course, with some remote places of the world. So it keeps growing. But the point is this. From a certain Erin Ben Ocker from Oxford University explained that from a technological innovation, we can derive a social innovation. So the question when we address trust is, what is the type of social innovation we have today? I see 2 models. The model of the past, which was more top-down, this idea of authority, knowledge retention, something more centralized, to work through the networks, which is more today distributed, because we can access knowledge like never before in history. We can connect with people like never before in history. So this is one big change here we have to take into account. An example of this social innovation we may see is Airbnb. Our most intimate place is welcoming, on average, every day, 2 million people. Because we can create trust, which is not new, by the way. Trust has always been there. It's like fake news. Nothing new. What is new with digital? It's the scale, the speed, the spread. And with Airbnb and technology today, we can really create that bond between people. So a certain Rachel Botsman from Oxford University was writing an excellent book that I do recommend to everybody called Who Can You Trust? And she was explaining this paradigm shift we see today with first, back in the past, a long time ago, the so-called local trust, the idea that we were living in tribes and trusting one another directly. Then came the age we do know today, the institutional trust, which is this idea, the top down the pyramid, knowledge is power, authority is centralized. And with the rise of digital, with everything getting connected, we see today a new model called, and this is some sort of shift, a distributed trust. And I think this is really important to keep in mind that it's not like we're going to ditch a model and take the other one. No, we need to find a brand new balance. And I found a quote very interesting from a certain Carlos Mudas from the European Commission. He said, you know, the big problem, the trust crisis we have today with institutions, is that institutions were made in a physical world in a vertical way, when today we increasingly live in a digital world in a horizontal way. So how can we rethink institutions, whether it is governments, media, corporations, NGOs, even education? The answer might be two letters, C-O, co-creation. How can we co-create as a society? How can we co-create to address the trust issues I will be addressing here today? So this is this big idea here, you know, to get us, because it's about everybody in this room, me, myself included, that trust in influence lie more with individuals than they do with institutions today. A famous PR agency called Edelman had a report in 2017 called Trust in Crisis, explaining how digital has been affecting our connection towards the authority, the historical institution. So the trust issues we see today, I think it's important to start having in mind the business model of so-called free online platform online like Facebook or Google. That's clear. They are incredible tools, incredible technology. They've definitely changed the world for the better for so many, many reasons. I just love the tools. But we have a business model that doesn't work anymore, this one. The idea that we use a service for free. We don't pay, but no, come on. There's nothing such like a lunch or something. We always have to pay at some point. The idea is, if you don't pay with your money, you pay with something else, which is data, of course. Nothing new. So I see 9 steps here within this business model that is a race for attention, because attention is the most valuable asset we have today. You could think time, but you can give time without giving attention, not reverse. So basically, we have a system which is starting with the conception, the so-called user interface, where basically we have a design thinking process that is leading to captology, this idea of how can you get attention, because the more time you spend, the more data you collect, and the more data you collect, the more money you make. 98% for Facebook revenue, which is big. So this is the idea of attention, retention, collection, segmentation, selection, promotion, completion, and finally innovation. So this is a cycle that is working this way. And as long as we are stuck within this system, we have a business model that is exacerbating trust issues we will be addressing right afterwards. So I can share an example with you, like for the conception, the red notifications, the endless scrolling, the autoplay videos, the seen received notificational messages, the writing, you know, all these tactics that have been thought consciously by these companies. Because of course, they needed to seek profit for the shareholders and for innovation at the same time. And then of course, you may have the notifications, the reminder and all these things. The time you spend, the data like likes, comments, shares, voice, clicks, everything we can collect, we collect. And then inferred data. Inferred data, I will be addressing this afterwards, but it's quite easy to understand. We have, when you talk about your data, our data, personal, 3 layers. The first is the one everybody's talking about, the shared data. Then we have observed data, like the metadata, data we don't really know we share, you know. And these two together, we can infer something about your personality. And this is how you make advertising there. Like pages, places visited, language spoken, for example. And then ads, $22 billion last year, net income Facebook. So the big problem is here. It's definitely the business model we need to fix at some point. And when you understand that the business model is the root cause of social media issues we have today, I think we can start talking about solutions. And I see here 3 key issues: addiction, polarization, and manipulation. Let's look at each of them. Addiction first. 2 concepts to keep in mind. The captology I did explain. That's a concept from Stanford University. How can you use technologies as persuasion tools. And using these techniques, you can actually start using what we call the nudge theory, you know, from the verb nudge, like a little something to make sure you can change behavior of somebody, maybe used for good, maybe used for bad. So this is how this presents actually. Like on one side you have the computers, and then you have like the action that you are trying to reach in this case. So the idea is, how can you nudge your users for certain actions? Let's take an example with Facebook. Like, you know, this is typical nudging example. On your left and on your right, you have the big blue button, turn on notification, and then, you know, beneath that, very small and discreetly not know. And then you have another pop-up window. But let's talk about notification. You know, it's important to have in mind that every time you see notification, your brain is releasing what we call dopamine, which is a substance of pleasure. So it knows that if you check out this notification, you will have this little substance of pleasure. So it works the same with email, by the way. So what we could call potentially some sort of social media addiction would be this. Imagine yourself in a car, and it's like the accelerator of the car is going forward without you controlling it. The good thing is, with this impulsive system, that we can control that with a brake. We call it the inhibition system. That's a big difference with cocaine, for example. The inhibition system with cocaine is really damaged, which is not the case with social media. So that is a typical example of using notifications for nudging a certain action, what they call the social feedback loop. Read this first. Then we have polarization. You might have heard about this concept of filter bubble. Well, let's make it simple. You will, of course, have all the slides and even extras, actually, to dig deeper. But that is the idea of intellectual isolation. So to make it simple, when you use your newsfeed, whatever, no matter the social network, you know that this algorithm-based system makes sure that you get the contents that you want. So it creates, you know, a bubble for yourself for your political opinions or ideology. So that makes it really complicated sometimes to be exposed to other opinions. It's like, you know, we could take this example of stairs and accelerators. What do you choose, the stairs or the accelerators? Imagine it's like checking your newsfeed or deciding that you are using lists for your content. And this is good for critical thinking. And this is also already a way to fight, you know, the spread of fake news and hate speech. We need to define what, by the way, online. When you have filter bubble in mind, let's take these words. Word of the year of 2016, post-truth. What is this idea here? The idea is that with the post-truth, this is the idea that objective facts are less likely to shape public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. And another concept that I found very interesting, by the way, you have stats here from the 2016 US election, with the top 20 fake news there. I mean, like the biggest fake news was Pope Francis backing the president, now President Donald Trump. So it was really showing that through the algorithm, with the business model of such platforms, we were pushing fake news forward. It was really having impact. We still have to study that topic sociology-wise, but really having impact on the way society works. That is something really serious that they started addressing at Facebook, for example. But it's not just Facebook, by the way, of course. And then, filter bubble, there is this question of exacerbating post-truth, but there is another concept that I found online on a video from a certain Cold Fusion YouTube channel, very interesting. Talking about the so-called Dunning-Kruger Effect. I found this idea very interesting to get us thinking. The Dunning-Kruger Effect is quite simple to take into account. It's like, imagine two axes, confidence in knowledge. This is the idea that the less we know about a topic, the more we may feel confident about it. And the more we study that topic, the more we feel not confident, or we realize how complicated things are. It's not just Trump or Clinton, or it's not just Brexit or no Brexit, you know. We realize that really something tough there. And the idea with this Dunning-Kruger effect is that through the filter bubbles, we are kind of exacerbating this polarization within the conversation, like creating, you know, in a fast-changing world, some tough conversation between users. And still, it heads back to the business model of such platforms. And then manipulation, of course, the fake news that you know. I see different models here. You have first the parody that everybody knows, just something for fun. You don't want to harm anybody. Then you may have content which is a false connection, the so-called clickbait. Then you have the misleading content. You use real content to frame a story. The false context, so you use a real picture or real video, but you put it out of context and it creates another story, which is fake news as well. And then you have, of course, the imposter content, so you are impersonating somebody or a group of people, for example. And then the last two are manipulated content. You take content that you change, like imagery, and of course the one which is totally doctored. Let's take an example. A parody could be the Hey Together Facebook video. Jimmy showed tonight, I'm not sure about the name anymore, but they were making a very funny video parody. You can find it on YouTube there. That was totally, you know, satire here, but that was really funny here. False connection, maybe you've heard about this very funny website, story, which is about a restaurant in London, which was #1 on TripAdvisor. The problem is the restaurant doesn't exist. Very funny story, by the way. Misleading content, you know the yellow vest movement in France we have today. So that was a Nazi gesture here, put in context, but actually the gesture was not about that. So they had to, re-explain that because of an official person putting this so-called Nazi gesture forward. The false content, so everybody's talking Brexit this day, with the 2002 picture from the Queen to show how massive the crowd at the protest last Sunday or 2 weeks ago were to support another referendum. That's, this idea of false context. Of course, imposter context, today, and that is a huge topic to address with fake news, we can start using face swapping, using your voice to create fake content, which is making it even harder because we go beyond text and beyond images as well. And then, of course, you can basically have a manipulated content, like this example from NVIDIA. This pretty known company in the thing from the US, not sure. And the article I did mention before from, Pope Francis backing Donald Trump for election, which is totally fake in this case, totally doctoral. The problem is we can also have, and this is something we will have to address, bots making the case even worse in the future. Last year, Facebook was releasing a report to show that over the course of 12 months only, they deleted 2.8 billion fake accounts, more than the number of accurate accounts that we have today on the network. And some estimate that we may have more bots on the internet tomorrow than real human beings. I don't know you, we were talking this morning about that, but sometimes I'm not sure if I'm talking to a robot or a human being because this is getting smarter. And that's like, sometimes quite a quote. Well, I will keep the stories from me here. So that was, the bad part, like problems. But I'm a positive person as well, so first. So let's talk about the solutions. How can we build and protect trust online? And I want to call out on the contracts for the web from Mr. Tim Berners-Lee, who funded or co-founded with the Belgian the World Wide Web. You see a responsibility and accountability for 3 stakeholders here: the governments, the companies, and of course, the citizen, us. Keep in mind that responsibility is about an obligation. Accountability is about an outcome. So if we stop at governments here, the idea is, how can you ensure that everybody can access the internet? How can you make sure that the internet is accessible all the time? And how can you make sure that we can protect people's privacy in this digital age today? One example that I want to share with you is Estonia. It's an amazing country, very small, maybe like Cyprus, 1.3 million inhabitants. But this is considered the most advanced digital society in the world in terms of how can we find an alternative to the GAFA or the BATX from China. How can we make sure that we protect the citizens' rights? Look it up. It's an amazing example. And then we have companies, of course. So the idea is, how can you make internet accessible? Or can you protect privacy? And can you make sure that you are building technologies that serve humanity? When Mr. Zuckerberg says, I want my daughter to think of me as a father who did his best to change the world for the better, I'm like, cool, Mark, let's start changing your business model first. Because the network, we're not going to ditch it. It's so great for billions. But we need to change it because we have problems, that's for sure. So a quote from Mr. Tim Berners-Lee who says, you know, two myths exist today. The idea that first, advertising is the only business model. A second myth is the idea that we cannot change this model. So we need to be more creative about this. How can we find alternative, like using cryptocurrency, for example? That was an idea I've seen once. That how can we fix and execute this idea? We were talking about execution as well. And of course, citizens, about us here in this case. So be creators on the web. How can we contribute to the web? Create communities that matter, that respect one another, and fight for a web that matters. Because the web is here to stay, that's for sure. For everybody in this room, I wish us to live as long as possible, because the world is exciting. Scary at some point, but exciting as well. Abundant stocks, embrace flows. What is the idea here? It was a book I read 2 years ago called Thank You for Being Late, an amazing book from Thomas Friedman, with the idea that the world is shifting from knowledge stocks to the flow of stocks, or to knowledge stocks to the flow of knowledge, excuse me. So this is the idea that we have cycles of skills that are changing this fast that, remember, in the past it was top-down, and we have this digital horizontal world. So knowledge is accessible to anybody. But I would say information, to be precise, is accessible to anybody, because information is not knowledge. So the idea is, since the world is changing this fast, I'm talking digital here, since digital knowledge is changing this fast, it's not about retention, like in the past, knowledge is power. It's about sharing knowledge, and it's about the idea of contribution. If you look at Manpower Group, a study who says that within the future we expect that Gen Z, 1995, 2015 something, 65% of the jobs they will be doing just doesn't exist yet. So this idea of being creator is the idea of not just being participant online. You want to fix trust online, start being a player in the digital ecosystem. We all have within this space knowledge which is useful for people around. Get it outside, making sure, whether it is commenting an article, very short, or writing about something, making a video, no matter what your talent is. Start contributing, because it is about a win-win process online, and it helps build trust online as well. And then there is, this idea that content is good for building relationship. That relationships, of course, are built on trust, and trust, if we talk business in this case, because it's not just about business, of course, has an impact on revenue. We don't have time for the details here, but I wanted to share some very practical tips with you. So I've collected 15 based on data-based and based on my experience with clients as well. So you can use it straight away after the day or after the 2-day conference, and start building that content that matter online to create connections. So there is the part of contribution. Then there is the part of community. For the community, I think that one of the key skills we need to keep developing over time is this idea of critical thinking. Today, we can doctor anything. I can create a video with somebody with the face being swapped using the voice of that person, which is totally fake. So I really appreciate this thinking from Mr. Edward Snowden, saying that we don't need censorship to fight fake news or harmful content. No, we need more speech. I think that is key, and that is part of this idea of community, this part of fighting for a web that does matter. By the way, an initiative from a former digital ethicist at Google called Human Technology. I'm just sharing this with you because I found it fantastic, and Tristan Harris, the person responsible for that, has been making a great job with this initiative, so you will find it back there. So that is actions you can take on, but I think that as a citizen, as a student, as a professional, as a person, in both personal and professional life, your digital identity, which is basically the set of information about you online, can be about soy company as well, but that's not my topic, can really help you build something that creates trust at scale. Let me take that example back from Airbnb. What makes Airbnb so successful is that they can verify identity. You cannot review or comments on a night without having booked through the platform. So they create this mechanism that makes sense to foster trust online. I did mention, if you remember, the data layers, the shared data, the observable data, and the inferred data. Keep in mind that your personal data is also your friend's data. When a friend of yours tags yourself on a picture or check you in at a party, that is your personal data as well. So it's not just about us as a person, it's us about as a collective as well. You will find, on the top corner on the left there, the source. Very interesting website to get you thinking on these data layers there. So the idea, as you know, nothing new for you. We, of course, are kind of having a fusion of both online and offline. And I really like this idea from a certain Luciano Floridi from Oxford explaining that we are kind of seeing an on-life emerging. So behind these concepts, we need to understand that everything can actually connect, and it is having a great impact on society and our personal lives. So how can you plan and manage your digital identity? Today is a quick talk, so I'm not like going into details, but you will have the slides with you after the conference, and you will have time to review that. I think we need to be very practical, like a flight from A to B. You can have 3 phases. You can ask me for details. I can share some tips as well to really start planning and managing your digital identity. 3 slides, and concretely, all the steps you can take on as well online. My recommendation for you today to start building that digital identity that protects you first and then that helps you build content that matters for the audience is having these steps. First, manage your permission. Might make sense, but many people just don't check the settings. Look at the Facebook crisis last year. They were actually doing some research and they realized that after the Cambridge Analytica, most people actually were not checking the settings. So start protecting your data, because I think this is a core asset for you online. Of course, you can then secure your accounts and download your data, because back it up is important. What you put on Facebook is the Facebook house. Your website is your website, so if you can take back your data, it's always good. Then you can audit your presence online. I guess everybody in this room has already checked out her Google presence. How can you act based on the result that you would find online? So I'll share resources with you here. You have different actions you take on here, like deleting yourself, getting in touch, or if you need it, getting in touch with Google. You have the link there to remove a result that would not be relevant for you or for, in the future, children as well. It's an important topic. So we have, this is a situation that is evolving. If I'm back like next month, maybe I will have something new to share with you as well. It's quite a wide topic here. And this idea is more like having in mind that this question of technology and social media issues here, before being technical, is also a political question, like for everybody in this room. So I think that we still have open questions. Scarlett Johansson was publishing in the Washington Post lately that a face was swapped in a porn video, which was watched 1.5 million times on the porn website. And she said in the Washington Post that she acknowledged it's just impossible to stop people who really want to harm you. And we have the technology today. So the technology have existed for some time. Trust, fake news, nothing new. Face swapping, for the movie industry, we can say it's not new. What is new is the accessibility, how easy it is for the people, and reasons, for example. Mimicking voice as well. So the question would be, what if tomorrow, let's say for political reasons, we have, very realistic looking, explosive videos hitting social media for the next US election? How can you spot that? What if AI, artificial intelligence, cannot spot the problems or the issue we will be having with that? That's a question. Another question would be, based on the idea of the digital identity can have an impact on influence and trust online. If we look at the past 20 years, we've been, when it comes to our digital identity, from searching people on Google to searching people on Google and social, and maybe that's a question mark, some personal scoring. This is the Chinese social credit system. Remember what I said earlier today, technological innovation, social innovation. If we look at the venture capital invested in China, we see that China is kind of taking the lead when it comes to technological innovation. So what if tomorrow Chinese technologies are leading? What is the impact on the social norms on the Western world? Are we going to have the social credit system of China, which is about scoring people, or some sort of, like Facebook had with the 0 and 1s? That's a question mark we have as well. Another question that makes sense is the Apple and FBI case. You might remember this case from, I think, 2 years ago. This case was very interesting. What is it? That FBI wants to access with a backdoor the content to an iPhone. But I think this is raising a key question for society with the balance between the investigative power of the state and the right to privacy in the digital age. So if the platforms like Facebook and Google decides what privacy is, how do you balance the power of the corporations and the power of the state? How do you find that balance that respects the citizen and that respects the democracy as we know it as well? That's another big question we have. And then we have the French Republic that is seeking to, at least thinking about the idea that we should ditch anonymity online to fight fake news and harmful content. But if you do that, you are actually questioning something else as well, which is basically how can you properly crack down and crack down on hate speech and make sure that you preserve the freedom of expression online. If you want to ditch anonymity online, how can you preserve that tomorrow? Is it really the solution? That's another question mark we have. And this one, I find it very interesting as well. For those of you having kids and for the kids to come, in the UK, they were doing some research and they found out that between age 0 and 13, in the UK, parents were sharing 1,300 pictures of their children. The children not being aware of this data being shared. The question could be here, what if your data tomorrow has an impact, I mean, for the children of today? What if this data is having an impact on tomorrow's applications for university? That is a question we are not addressing. It's like, you know, the business model I did mention earlier. As a child, you need to explore, you know, as a teenager. What if you feel observed, whether you are or not? We know psychology-wise that it is impacting your behavior. What if the child is not, you know, having this exploration space? We all need it at the time because of these technologies if we don't regulate them. That's another big question we have here today. So the key takeaways would be this. First, keep in mind that, and nothing new, of course, for you, but really insist on that digital, as things connect, is having a growing influence on our daily activities. Then keep in mind that we have this current tension between, you know, the institutional trust we know today and this idea of trust through the network. How can you balance that? How can we start co-creating? For example, for governments, how can we start co-creating laws? Look at the Yellow Vest movement in France. It's an amazing case. Sad to see the violence we have, but that's an amazing case because it is addressing this question of how of balance we need in this brand new world, connected world. And then you have, of course, this idea that the business model is the real cause. Mr. Zuckerberg, if you hear me, that's a great tool you have, but still, if you don't fix the cause, you waste your time fixing the consequences. And then, of course, the responsibility. I think it's very important to have it in mind that we have three bodies in this case: the governments, the companies, and the citizen. And last but not least, the importance of addressing the challenges of the future. I think it will be absolutely key for the years to come. So if you are interested in this idea of digital identity, we were working with experts from all around the world last year to really think deeply, thoroughly about the questions around digital identity and the impacts on society. You can find this report at the link there. You will have it as well. Very deep and complete report we've been making here to address these questions. And for the presentation of today, so you can find the link or for the Chinese WeChat, whatever, you can directly scan the QR code and find the presentation. So you will find this presentation with extra slides as well, you know, to get your thinking broader. And I would much appreciate to have a conversation with as many of you as possible within the next few hours, days. So I thank you for your time.
Open, please.
Up.
Hello. Yes. Dennis, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation and clarifying our minds. May I?
Yeah.
Have a couple of questions. And I'd like to address our students. If you have any questions, please prepare them. I have two questions from the presentation. I actually asked this to one of our guests last week at the faculty. What will be the top 3 jobs within the next 10 years? What do you think is going to happen to the data world? What should students do in order to solve all of these problems that you just mentioned?
Well, I think before mentioning jobs, I would say first that keeping yourself up to date is absolutely essential. I think a key part of working in digital today, and I would say it's not just about working, it's really about life in general. It's keep yourself updated. And I would say we tend to look at the West. Start also looking at the East, because I think the role China is playing already. Look at WeChat. If you don't have it, download WeChat on your phone and compare with Messenger. I mean, they are not copying anymore. They are innovating. So look at both sides, the West and the East. So my key message would be really like being pitched all the time. And for that, you can read, you can watch whatever you read books, I think makes sense as well, very important. Talking jobs, I would say that there are like plenty if you look at reports.
Because we just talked about the skills that are actually renewing itself, critical thinking skills are essential and so forth. So how do you think that's going to be integrated to the educational system, and what is expected from the students to actually combine those skills with their education?
Well, let me mention jobs directly. I would say maybe we would be having some sort of digital identity planner. You know, something like how can you help families with the babies plan the digital identity of the babies for the future. That is a job we could be having.
Digital identity planner.
Definitely.
Okay.
We could have a reputation or trust something manager. Like for
trust manager.
Yeah, trust manager for the ethics in companies is going to become absolutely critical. In an increasingly transparent world, we will need these skills as well. And maybe some sort of data washer. You know, how can you clean your online presence? Because the more data we will be producing over time, the more we will need to master this data and clean things up at some point in time. As we speak right now, it's only 2019, but we all can witness, there's no magic there, that the world is getting connected. So somebody said once, I don't remember who, but everything that can be connected will be connected, I believe. Maybe it will be useless, sure, but if we can connect, at least we'll be trying to connect. So the impact will be big.
So you think we'll need people who will actually clean the data that is uploaded to all of these clouds and digital systems? My last question, you talked about the civil discourse when you're talking about how to solve this problem. We should actually elevate the civil discourse in order to clarify the trustworthiness of these platforms. Can you elaborate civil discourse? I mean, how should civil discourse help the digital world?
For me, it all comes back to this idea of responsibility and accountability. I mean, if you remember one of the slides, there were, you know, this idea of on life, you know, another buzzword you may think. But behind the buzzword on life, there is this idea that it's not like, you know, digital and real life, like wow, two different. No, what we do online has an impact. We can really do good and do bad. So this idea of discourse is taking into account that when you comment, even if you are using anonymity, you may harm somebody. You may get people commit suicide. I mean, this is not, we're not joking anymore. This is not just like the space there and then the real life. These two are blending together. And I think that having this in mind can get us, you know, be more critical with ourselves, the way we talk to one another online. So this is the idea of, you know, respecting one another in the end. You know, that's in having this in mind, that digital is not just a world on the side. It's really getting blended within our lives.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from the crowd? Yes, we do.
Hi.
Hi.
You talked about nudge theory.
May we learn your name and your
sure,
department?
Yeah. My
please?
name is Rida Jubika. I'm studying masters at the Department of Economics, and going back to what you said earlier about nudge theory and the dopamine rush that we're all aware of that social media gives you and whatnot. Now. Do you consider it ethical to manipulate these, I would call them resources in a sense, in that when someone's trying to build an online presence, an online business, selling something, utilizing these for that end goal, is that ethical? Do the ends justify the means, or do you, is it black or white? Is it a gray area? Like, what are your comments on that?
Well, I always appreciate to start with the words. I think it's important because, you know, sometimes, and it's like all of us act like this, let's start with the definitions. What would be your definition of manipulation? And what would be your definition of persuasion?
Oh, okay.
And what would be the difference between both? And how can you place the cursor? And at what point, and this is the ethical question, you decide, okay, this is maybe manipulation in the bad side or persuasion in the good side. You know, this is a question that you have to address. In the case of social media, it was definitely that we can agree with the idea that social media is great for so many reasons. But when I see people around me that it's, I mean, like, everybody might have experienced that. You are with friends around the table, and all of a sudden you have a blank, and directly you jump into your smartphones. Or people are going to the choice, like, directly you take it into your smartphone, you have that notification. An example, you are, you know, switching off, and you come back to a social network, no matter which one. And after an hour, inside you feel a little excitement because it's been an hour without checking things out. I don't know if somebody has ever felt that, like to see if there are something new or because you just published a picture. So the mechanism taken into account within this process, it's an ethical question. If I'm the right person to tell you whether it's good or bad, I think I'm not. I think this is a collective question. So we need to talk together, like Snowden say. It's not less speech, it's more speech we need. So your answer will be, I'm fine. Mine will be, I'm not, maybe. And then this is how we can move things forward. That would be my answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. I'd like to inform you that our speakers are going to be here for full 2 days. So you will be able to ask questions to them individually during the coffee breaks and so forth. And I have to keep questions quite short on the stage in order to move to the next session. But I think I have a question. Oh, questions are coming. I have a question over there.
Come back to me afterwards and then we can get the question.
Yes, our speakers are going to be here. Please feel free to ask questions to them. Can we give the microphone to our student over there, please?
Yes, hello, good morning, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask you a question.
Can we have your name and your department, please?
Yes,
first?
my name is Luay. I'm in the Department of Advertising and Public Relations. You've mentioned that in the past people used to search people on Google, and now we're using social media applications and platforms. And you suggested that it's unknown what's gonna happen in 2020, for example. So do you have any ideas what would be the possible outcomes or possible examples of how searching people would change in the future? Like in Google, we used to know the name, maybe the job of each person. And now we can get into more details in each individual personal life using social media applications and platforms. So what's next in your point of view?
Well, what I am pretty sure about is that I have no idea. But what I can tell you, because, you know, we have so many gurus out there, and I don't want to be one of them. But, of course, we can look at the situation and have some, you know, feelings. And I think that digital, when I did say that it will be having a growing influence on our lives, I truly believe that. And if you look at China, I'm not saying we're going into the Chinese model, and God knows how we can discuss this. But, you know, the scoring system where we kind of score interactions between people and companies is having a good impact. If you go just back to the Google Glass time, remember that maybe, you know, was a big fail. I don't know if we're going to move from the smartphone to the glasses, but could be. Maybe we need a leap between, you know, and maybe the leap will be the visual technology, because look at your smartphone. Everybody has a camera, but we just use it to take pictures and videos. What if you use Google Lens, if you know, type it, Google Lens, just points your camera and then you can enrich your world. Like, you know where this glass comes from, the bottle, you can directly buy it. Yeah, that's business in this case and everything. So what if Google Lens, for example, becomes the leap between the smartphones and the wearables, whether it is glasses or lens, I don't know, they have patents for that. And then if we jump from one point to the other, maybe it's possible, but I don't know. That at some point in time, in social interactions, we can directly know much more about individuals in the future with a quick, you know, flashcards about the person we're meeting. That could be some sort of explanation. Then the question behind would be, who's responsible? The states, the corporations, both? How do we organize that as a society? That is an upper question.
But like...
That's a second question, right?
No, it's related. So let's say like now things are getting creepier and scarier when it comes to social media entering our personal life. So let's say, for example, Snapchat. People can really know where's your location now just swiping down, looking into the Snap map. So things are getting creepier by time. Like, there's nothing such as privacy or personal things. So do you think that in the future, these things could be more dangerous or could be more helpful?
I think that's why, this is the reason why Dennis gave you the privacy settings slide, so we can actually learn more about that, because
It's all about
people
the
don't
permission,
actually, please.
I think, yeah, it's about fixing the permissions. The map is a good example from Snapchat. That is what I pinpointed before. Fix your settings first. You can fix them. I mean, just take control. You know what is accessible, what's not. You say creepy. It can become creepy. I said before, I find it the time we live in so exciting, but I'm realistic at the same time. Foot on the ground. I know that it also can become creepy and scary because of the speed of change, which is this fast. So again, technology is not just like coming out of nowhere. It is what we make it that makes technology good or bad. So I hope we are moving towards the right direction. And we start by having a conversation, by fixing our settings, by sharing knowledge with our loved ones. This is how we start concretely to act and have an impact. That's my real belief there.
Thank you very much. I know you all have questions, but I really need to keep the program going. Dennis, thank you very much for accepting my invitation to come to Cyprus. We have a small gift, a small reminder from the university. Just a reminder from our students, from our university administration, which you can keep. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.